Today on The Big Story, Indonesian President Joko Widodo announces his new cabinet. How will it affect Singapore? Singapore has a new international trade strategy to take us into the digital future. And 37 families in Katong will have to move out of their homes because of government plans. Find out why. Good evening and welcome to The Big Story. I'm Dylan Ang. Now we begin first with the latest coming out from Hong Kong, where the extradition bill has been officially killed. Now, if you remember, it was the introduction of this bill that sparked off the protests several months ago. Let's cross it live now to Hong Kong with Straits Times regional correspondent Elizabeth Law. Hey Liz.
Hi Dylan.
Hey Liz, so now the bill is officially dead. What happens now?
To be fair, not much happens because when Chief Executive Carrie Lam announced that the bill was going to be formally withdrawn on September 4th, everyone thought, hey, does this mean that the protests are now going to die down a little bit more? Are people going to stop coming out? But no, because they've continued to come out in the month and a half since then, and they've actually continued to say that 5 demands, not one less, because it means that even if she had met one of their demands, which is for the bill to be killed or to be completely withdrawn,
right.
The fact is that they have 4 other demands, and of course we know that these demands are amnesty for the prisoners, for an independent, for those who have been arrested to be reclassified from rioters to something else, for an independent commission to look into police brutality, and also lastly, of course, they want universal suffrage, which is to nominate and elect their own leaders. So I suppose nothing much is going to change. This is going to continue. But what is promising is the fact that last Sunday, in an interview with TVB, Mrs. Lam had actually said that if the IPCC, which is the Independent Police Complaints Committee, if their findings, so now they are the ones that are looking into police brutality instead of an independent commission, which is something similar to a COI. I've explained many times here what a COI is, so I'm not going to repeat it again. So
Yeah.
Basically said that if the IPCC cannot satisfy the public anger, then she would look into other means to try and assuage this very visceral public anger against the police. Now, what exactly she's going to do, she has not said, and it all waits to be seen.
Now, Liz, separately, the murder suspect who triggered off the protest was released from prison this morning. Of course, he was charged with money laundering, and actually this caused a political row between Hong Kong and Taiwan. So, why is that so?
Okay, so this is like it's a multi-part question, right? Firstly, we need to go back to how this whole thing started in the first place. So basically, Chan Tong Kai, who is a Hong Kong man, went on holiday with his pregnant girlfriend to Taiwan. He killed her there, and he came back to Hong Kong, which means that he has now escaped getting arrested in Taiwan because the Taiwanese police do not have jurisdiction here. So Hong Kong police have actually arrested him and put him in jail by saying that, oh, you stole her credit card and use your credit card, so therefore we can jail you for money laundering offences. But that being said, he still had all these murder charges that he had to face because, you killed someone, you can't just run away with it. And he admitted to it as well that he killed his girlfriend. So what happened was that Mrs. Lam now used this case as an example on why Hong Kong needed to have an extradition bill, which of course sparked off all the protests that we've seen for the last nearly 5 months. Which brings us to the last 2 weeks, starting from last week, where Chan, who has been in prison all this time, says that he feels completely remorseful, is racked with guilt, and what he wants to do is that he wants to surrender himself to Taiwan, which is great because Hong Kong says, look, now you're surrendering yourself of your own accord, and if the Taiwanese take you in, we can actually draw a line under this entire incident. But no, Taiwan says, no, we will not accept his surrender, and it's sparked an entire war of words with Taiwan saying that Hong Kong firstly forced him to offer to surrender himself for political reasons, and they said that they will not accept his surrender, and only if Hong Kong agrees to a legal framework. And Hong Kong, on the other hand, says that, look, no, Taiwan, you are the ones that are politicizing it. Here you have a murderer who is walking free. We can't keep him in prison for any longer because he has served his time. Right. We can't keep an innocent man here. So why did this spark off such a huge war of words? If we take a step back, what this means for Taiwan is now facing an election that will be in January. Now, Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen, who is obviously quite pro-independence, to her, if her government were to say, okay, we are accepting this man who has surrendered to us on Hong Kong's terms, it would look like they are showing a way weakness, and also accepting by extension what is being proffered to them by Beijing, because Hong Kong is a Chinese territory. So it doesn't work that way for them. Not just the opposition parties who are going to say that she's showing weakness, but people in her own party who are very, very, very pro Taiwanese independence will also say that, look, you are showing signs of weakness. Maybe you may not be a good leader. Now, on the other hand, for Hong Kong, their hands are partially tied as well, because they have Beijing to answer to. But at the same time, what Taiwan is saying that they want to do, which is to send Taiwanese officials to come into Hong Kong to pick up Chan and any other evidence that they have here to bring back to Taiwan for investigation, means that now they are allowing the Taiwanese police to have cross-boundary jurisdictions, which is not something that they want as well.
All right, thanks, Liz, for talking to us a bit about this, calling us live, of course, from Hong Kong. Do stay safe, and of course, if you'd like to read the latest developments, you can always head on down to our website at straitstimes.com. Now, moving on to our second story, we head south now to Indonesia, where President Joko Widodo has unveiled his new cabinet for a second term. The Indonesia leader recruited politicians from across the aisle as well as the private sector. The most high profile of which is ride-hailing firm Gojek's co-founder, Mr. Nadiem Makarim. Amid global economic uncertainty, Mr. Widodo said in his speech that his selection was a forward cabinet, and that going forward his team will focus on human development, job creation and boosting opportunities for SMEs. So joining me now via Skype is Straits Times regional correspondent Alina Ashad. Hey Alina.
Hello.
Hey Alina, so give us a brief summary of who's who in the new cabinet.
From what we can see, the cabinet is made up of a mix of politicians as well as professionals. Some are old hands, like experienced first-term ministers, like Finance Minister Dr. Sri Mulyani Indrawati, and there are some fresh faces from the private sector, like Nadiem Makarim, the co-founder of Gojek. The cabinet also includes members of political parties in Jokowi's ruling coalition, as well as opposition political figures like Mr. Prabowo Subianto. Analysts have called it a cabinet compromise, or a cabinet of compromise, where President Jokowi cannot offer seats only to professionals, but also has to accommodate political parties in exchange for their political support. One analyst has likened it to gado-gado cabinet, the local salad dish, where you throw all the vegetables into a bowl. Yeah, probably that's probably quite accurate description of the cabinet now.
Now, Alina, you mentioned Mr. Nadiem Makarim, of course, the co-founder of Gojek. Why select him?
Okay, Gojek is big in Indonesia. It is Indonesia's first unicorn startup. In Indonesia, Gojek provides not only car and motorcycle rides, but also a slew of services from food delivery to even makeup services. Mr. Nadiem Makarim will become the new Education and Culture Minister. That is a suitable post for him, and President Jokowi has made it his priority in the next 5 years to upgrade vocational skills of the country's young workers. You see, many graduates in Indonesia are unemployed because they lack industry skills. There is like a mismatch in what is being taught at schools and what the industry needs. There is also a lack of equipment and machines, as well as poorly trained teachers. So here is where Mr. Nadiem can lend his expertise. He's able to identify service gaps and provide solutions. And what is admirable is he's able to change the mindsets of people used to doing things the traditional way, to embrace technology and use it to better their lives.
Right. So, Alina, we talk a lot about Indonesia, but what does this actually mean for Singapore?
Okay. It is good news for Singapore. Singapore and Indonesia enjoy very good bilateral relations. In fact, Mr. Jokowi was in Singapore early this month for the annual leaders retreat, and it was a good, productive meeting. Singapore is Indonesia's largest foreign investor, with bilateral trade reaching $65 billion last year. And Mr. Jokowi's re-election and his government's focus on economy signal policy continuity for for ongoing projects between the two countries. It also means deeper cooperation in various sectors, such as human resource development, digital economy, tourism, and investment parks. All these are sectors that Indonesia want to focus on in the next 5 years, which Singapore wants to support. So I suppose Singaporeans can continue to visit Indonesia and enjoy eating some gado-gado.
I see. Thanks, Alina, for coming onto our show. And of course, if you'd like to read the full story as well as keep up with all the latest developments in Indonesia, you can always head on down to our website. It's straitstimes.com. Now, moving on to our next story, how can Singapore better prepare itself to face the economic challenges in a digital future? By making more friends, of course. In international trade speak, that means signing more free trade agreements or FTAs. Now, speaking at the Free Trade Agreement Symposium today, Minister in charge of Trade Relations, S. Iswaran, said that Singapore is working with like-minded partners to shape a new digital trade architecture. Singapore currently have over 24 FTAs with 36 trading partners all over the world. But that's not good enough, as current trade rules and policies do not address the needs of the digital economy. Minister in charge of Trade Relations S. Iswaran said today at the Free Trade Agreement Symposium that Singapore will have a new international trade strategy. That is, to actively partner like-minded countries and organizations and sign more digital economy agreements. Now, to tell us more about this, I'm joined here in the studio by senior political correspondent Grace Ho. Hey, Grace.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Now, Grace, tell us more about this FTA strategy and as well as the FTA symposium.
Well, this symposium marks a milestone of sorts because it's 20 years since Singapore embarked on its free trade agreement journey. Almost 20 years ago, it signed its first bilateral FTA with New Zealand. But back then, the received trade orthodoxy was that such bilateral agreements could be discriminatory. But Singapore took a different tack. So it made sure of three things in its FTAs. First, that they are WTO or World Trade Organization consistent. In other words, we don't break the international rules.
Yeah.
And second, they go over and above the WTO baseline commitments. And third, we remain open to other countries which wanted to join as well and who were willing to adopt the same high standards as us.
Right.
So it's a bit like piecing together Lego blocks. So you put one piece together, two pieces together, and over time you build a trade architecture where more and more partners feel comfortable to come on board. And in that process, you kind of adapt and change the trade rules.
Right, so Grace, while having more of such FTAs will help us to open markets, what more needs to be done so that we can compete better in a digital future?
As Minister Iswaran said today at the symposium, Singapore is starting work on new forms of partnerships called digital economy agreements. And these agreements, they set very clear and harmonized international rules, and they guard against digital and data barriers. They are also intended to address some of the emerging issues like artificial intelligence, digital identities. At the same time, Singapore is also working at the WTO with like-minded partners to develop baseline international rules that guide digital trade and how it's conducted. But as for Singapore businesses, they too themselves can think about how they can better tap on new forms of distribution in order to export their products. So instead of, for instance, going overseas to look for a distributor, why not market and sell your products online and sell them directly to end consumers?
Right.
The other point also raised by some of the panelists at the symposium was that there is actually a rather large market of more than 600 million people in your hinterland in ASEAN, which is 10 countries. So not just to look at markets like Europe and the US, but also to look within one's neighborhood to see what opportunities there are.
Right. Thanks, Grace, for telling us a bit about Singapore's trade plans for the future. I think we certainly have a lot to look forward to. Of course, if you'd like to see the full story, you can always head on down to our website at straitstimes.com. And once again, thanks, Grace, for coming on the show. Now, for our final story, the Singapore Land Authority has issued a notice to 37 families living in Katong to move out by the end of next year for major restoration and repair works. Take a look.
$1975. I moved here. That time the rent $250. I open my window, I sit there, I talk to my tree. I said, Alamak, I put you nicely already. Now you say, must go away, all people cut. I said, all grow already now, my.
So a bit of mixed feelings. We were sad that we have to leave, but we also understood why. I just hope that structurally they don't change too much. I think the charm is their lifestyle, which you can't replicate in an apartment. It's just amazing because it's along Hay Road, right? Once you step out 10 steps away from the house, it gets very busy. But once you come in, it's so quiet and private. Where do you get such places in Singapore?
Here with us to tell us more is journalist Michelle Ng. Hey Michelle.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. Now Michelle, what works are expected to be done to these houses in Katong?
So SLA says that they will be doing major restoration and repair works on to the roof and to the internal building elements. So it's likely to be things like waterproofing or to make sure that the structural integrity of the homes are is still there. So this because all these homes are actually quite old. So residents who rent these houses will not have their lease extended because all these are they are government, they're state properties, and
right.
The government rent them out to residents. So by the end of December 2020, so next year, they will have to all move out. And the repair works will take place from January 2021 to the end of the year.
So you mentioned that these houses are state-owned. So can you tell us a bit more about these houses and what makes them so unique?
Sure. These houses, they are quite unique because they are two-story terraces, so they look a bit like black and white colonial houses, but they are. But I don't think the SLA considers them to be like black and white houses. But so they are like a little cluster of like 42 houses, and so they have like a front porch and a back garden, and it's a really like rustic vibe in the whole area. It's really nice.
So, having said all these, all this, what's next for the residents?
Right now, most of the residents that I spoke to, they said they are looking for alternative accommodations. I think many of the residents would like to come back to stay. And SLA has said that those who are interested to return can register their interest to come back again. But rent will have to depend on like what's the rental market at that point in time.
Yeah, I guess it's no surprise that a lot of the residents want to go back and stay because it's really unique.
Place.
Yeah, it's really unique and it's really one of a kind, I think.
It's true.
So thanks Michelle for telling us a bit more about this news. Of course, if you'd like to watch the full video that the Straits Times produced or to read Michelle's full story, you can head on down to our website at straitstimes.com. Now those were the top stories of the day, and once again I'm Dylan and thanks for tuning in. Now join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.